Hi everybody, this is Jason here at RoofSnap,
And Katrina here with you.
and we have just started our, July monthly live webinar.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
already July.
it's
Oh
July.
my gosh, middle of summer.
Yeah, and we're just gonna chat with you guys here for about another minute. Just give everyone a chance to join. If you can't tell, it's like super sunny here in Ohio. It's blazing in, so I've got the sunglasses on today.
I just got the regular glasses on
But
today.
they still reflect that blue light, right?
That's true. That's
Easy.
true.
If you guys spend a lot of time on your computers, as I imagine many of you do, sketching roofs,
Yeah.
these blue blocking glasses are really amazing. My eyes are like always at rest now.
Mhm.
I don't have that eye strain anymore. So no particular, like, this isn't a product spot or anything.
We're not plugging anything.
Yeah, we're not plugging any specific brands or anything, but yeah, if you spend a lot of time behind a computer, and you know, I turned 39 this year, so I got to start looking out for my eyes. Yeah, but
I'm not going to tell you how old I turned this year.
no,
but
and I would
also
never ask.
looking out for my eyes.
Absolutely. But yeah, get yourself some good eye protection, and you know, these that I have, they transition, so when I go outside they get darker, and that's great for the roofing contractor as well.
Yeah.
Because if you're in and out of the office, in and out of the truck, getting up on roofs, you guys know how bright it is on sunny days. So protect your eyes.
Yes, yes.
And that's my BS for the first 5 minutes of this webinar. All right, well, Katrina, it's just a minute after 5, so I think probably everybody has joined. If you have any questions, or if you'd like to chat with us during this live webinar, you'll notice that if you're watching this on YouTube, either from your computer or maybe from your mobile device, there should be a little chat window that you can click into, and we'll have Josh, our well, he's our marketing guy, but for the moment, he's our producer. So he will be chatting with you through the live chat, and then any questions that come up, we'll try to answer towards the end.
Yeah.
Katrina, so pretty short webinar, I think, today. We'll probably go 25 minutes or so. So hang out with us. We're going to show you some cool stuff that we've just released since the last New Features live webinar. You know, not a lot of stuff has come out over the last month or two with regard to specific features and functionality, mainly because, you know, we're spending a lot of time just making the features that we already have better, and, you know, always squashing those bugs to make your experience better, and ultimately just spending time increasing the performance, speed, and those underlying functions that you guys don't even see or notice that they're there. So what I'd like to do, Katrina, is let's go ahead and just transition our screen over.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's go over to the web app
Yep,
here.
and as you can see, we are here in the web app. Let me make sure, Katrina, can you see my cursor there?
Yes.
All right, great. So we have just made the sketching scene a little bit more robust than what it had been, you know, initially. And we have created a new sort of tutorial video about what we're going to talk about today, but we thought it's such a interesting architectural style, and that is the Dutch Gable.
That's right.
That we wanted to take a moment. You know, most of the people who join our live webinars are our current customers, and so one of the things we really wanted to highlight here are basically the two different ways that you can draw Dutch Gables, and how our well, what we call it is the facet finding algorithm, right? But what that really means is the math and the calculations that take place in order to correctly calculate all of the different facets and sections of overhang when you're drawing a Dutch gable.
Exactly. So in layman's terms,
Yeah, put it in layman's terms for us,
non-nerd
Katrina.
terms here.
Yeah.
Just we want to show you how to accurately account for this type of architecture with your overhang section and your roof-to-wall material that you're going to need.
So I've switched over into draw mode here on the web app, and so as those of you who are familiar with the Dutch gable, what happens here is you have eaves on all four sides, and this is a simple Dutch gable. You can have more complicated Dutch gables that'll have other elements, but for this simple Dutch gable, we have eaves on all four sides, and that means we have an outside corner here where my cursor currently is. And let me lean in here just a little bit. Okay, so the hip line comes up, But instead of the hip going all the way up to a ridge, let me make sure I'm right there on it. Does that look right out right there? Yeah. So instead of the hip coming all the way up to a ridge, the hip actually comes up to the bottom of a rake. And then that rake continues up. And of course, we do have 90 mode turned on, so we can make sure that these rakes are perfectly vertical with regard to the orientation of the image. And then that rake terminates there into the ridge. So I'm going to go ahead and then just click and drag here across to the rake on the other end. And this is a symmetrical roof. So we are going to stop here and come down the rake and make sure that our cursor tail turns orange, so we've lined up with the bottom of the rake on the right side.
Perfect.
Then we'll come down that hip, and we're looking for those orange. Would you say they're orange?
Yep, those
Okay.
are orange.
All right. And then we'll come across that eave. Now I'll stop there for just a second. As you know, we always recommend every once in a while when you're drawing, click over into facets mode so you can begin to see those facets form by shading in blue.
Yeah.
Switching back into draw, I can now pick up from any spot where I have an endpoint. So where these two lines meet at the corner, I can click on that and start a line from there. So let's come down. Make sure it's nice and straight. And you guys know who've watched our videos before, I always go to the center of the gutter. And then I'm going to come up this hip. And I'm not just looking at the top of this hip, but I'm also looking at my cursor tail to make sure that I'm even with the top of the hip on the left side. All right, so I've gone up and I've connected that rake as well. Now I dropped that line by right-clicking. So whenever you have a line but nowhere to go, you just right-click and that's going to drop that line so you don't have to delete it later on. Starting from that right corner on the bottom, I'm going to come down across the eave here. And I'm going to make sure that I've got orange cursor tails so that I'm lined up as I come up here perfectly vertical. Now I've got the perimeter completely drawn. And I'm just going to come back now to this ridge, and I'm going to come down and make sure that 90 mode recognizes that I'm even, and then I'm going to draw on this last hip. All right, so many of you have drawn your Dutch Gables just like this, with no additional lines. And I'm going to go ahead and just zoom in on this a little bit. And then I'm going to click on the screen, but then just drag my mouse over to center this roof. And let's go ahead and switch over to facets. So at this point, we have accounted for all the facets. So we have individual zeros for each facet, 2 on the right, 1 up, 1 down. And for the most part, this is going to calculate all of the surface area. Now, it's not going to correctly calculate the surface area until we put in pitch, and it's not going to correctly calculate any of the line measurements until we label our edges. But what it's not currently accounting for, as this slope comes up, it probably has around a foot overhang. And so there's going to be a little bit of material lost with regard to our shingles where this overhang exists, that it's not going to calculate unless we continue drawing a few more lines and label those lines. So what I want to do is show you guys how to account for those overhangs and also how to account for that apron wall that's going to exist here. So your apron wall it's of course the horizontal roof to wall flashing. I don't know if you guys can see me down here in the corner. I'm using my hands, but you know, you've got, let's say it's vinyl siding on that little triangle at the end of that gable, and then the other roof kind of comes up into it. Oh, you're going to transition over for me? There we go.
Over so you can see your hand motions.
Here's your wall, right? And you've got the roof that comes up, and there's typically an apron metal that goes up under the siding and then comes down over the shingles. Sometimes it's secured down with like rubber grommeted screws. I know that crews that I've worked with in the past will actually put ice and water shield right there at that transition as well, just to make sure that any water that comes down behind the siding gets that ice and water shield and gets kicked out on top of the shingles.
Nice.
So we're going to transition back over in here. In order to account... Oh, I'm sorry, Katrina. All right, go ahead. All right. So with regard to this roof, I'm going to switch back over to the draw mode. And I'm going to start here, and I'm going to draw a little pocket line about a foot. Now, if the overhangs are bigger than a foot, of course, you're going to want to draw these lines consistent with the depth of that overhang. And then draw the roof to wall flashing down, and then just connect it here. And then I'm going to drop that line, and I'm going to repeat and do the exact same thing on the left. There we go. 1 foot. Come up. 1 foot. Now, at this point, the facet finding algorithm, as I mentioned before, the calculations that take place, they do require edge type labels. So if I click into facets right now, you're going to see this isn't quite right. I will use the remove tool to show you what has happened. We've got a facet here. That shouldn't exist all by itself. We've got one facet here for the whole roof section. But as soon as we go into edges and we label up these lines, so let's go eaves, and then rakes. So I've got 4 rakes, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to have hips. And then we're going to have a ridge in the middle. And then wall on both sides. And then 4 little sort of pocket step walls. There we go. Right. Now, I'm going to jump right back into facets. Remember how it was before we labeled the lines. Well, what this does, the edge types there enable RoofSnap to go ahead and calculate these slopes effectively and correctly for Dutch Gables. So now this slope does include the double shading here, accounting for that 1 foot overhang.
Nice.
This is going to give you the truest calculation. Of course, our hips, which I will zoom in on here. There we go. So that hip currently says it's 12 feet. Now I want to point out what happens when you add pitch. So every slope on this roof is a 512. So let's go ahead and go back over to facets, come down here to pitch, and just click on the 512 plus button, which applies it to all. Now we have 512. Switch back over to draw and go right back in on that hip. You can see it's grown by 1/2 foot. Now that takes into account the slope of the roof. Rakes, hips, valleys, step walls, and rakes all require pitch in order for their lengths to be calculated correctly. So as a final reminder, make sure to always label your lines and put in your pitch value, especially when you're drawing in these pockets for Dutch Gables.
Absolutely.
All right, well, Katrina, so we had discussed some other features, not necessarily new to RoofSnap, but maybe just not some of the most popular features, maybe overlooked features that our existing customers may benefit from using.
Yes, and I would love to take a peek at that here today with you guys.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and save this project?
Yeah.
All right. And then do you have a particular project that you would like for us to jump into to look at, so what summary reports are what we're going to be looking at today, and the value of summary reports with regard to your roofing business.
Exactly.
Okay.
That sounds good. You know, I can't think of an example project, but we've got these templates that are made, so we can throw in a couple of templates and generate
just
a quick
estimate right from here?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so within this project, we are going to jump in to the estimating portion. And real quick, we can click on the plus button down here, and we can build a couple quick estimates using templates that we've already created. So let's go ahead and do sort of like a better best. But I'm going to make it, let's do a better, which would be like an architectural shingle. So let's throw in this landmark.
Okay.
And I'm going to give it a name here real quick, landmark. All right, great. So there's option 1. Now this is a pretty small roof, and of course we haven't accounted for all of the accessories. We don't have any vents on there, any soil pipe boots. But for our purposes, you know, just for a quick demonstration, this should be good enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now let's jump right back into estimates, and let's do. Yeah, you know what? Let's just do one more option.
Okay.
And let's put in the Owens Corning Berkshire.
Sounds good.
All right, so we've got
parts and pieces there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we won't go through and customize all the parts and pieces here. You don't even need to pick shingle color right now, just to kind of show you about these summary reports. But what we will do is we'll go back to estimates here where we can see both of them. And, let's say you've given an estimate to your customer, the landmark in the Berkshire, and let's say that you're in final negotiations of the landmark. And so when you are a salesman and you're out, putting together your estimate, and maybe the customer's asking you for a discount, or maybe, you're just finalizing your pricing, this is a report that I'm about to show you that you could generate even before you present a final contract to your customer, just to kind of see where your margins are at.
Nice.
Select the estimate option that you're going to be sort of inspecting the gross margin of here, which is going to be the landmark in this case. And then we're just going to go back to the project here using the breadcrumb and go down to Documents. And what I'm going to do is click on the plus button in the bottom right and go to this summary report. Within this summary report, we're going to see some different values that are customizable. And so we'll talk about how you can change the settings for some of these values in order to dial in commission, overhead, and ultimately finalize what that gross margin is going to be when you use RoofSnap for estimating. I used to use this report all the time back when I was selling commercial roofing, just to take a look and make sure that my margins were going to be good before I committed to providing a contract to the customer.
Gotcha.
So for this particular salesman, we do not have an overhead defined, but you could, at the user level, define a specific overhead amount. So if you were going to take 10% right off the top for operating expenses, you could define that right within any specific user, which means not all your users have to have the same overhead amount.
Gotcha. Great.
But what we're seeing here, of course, is the total contract price, subtracting out any overhead, which is just 0 for us, showing the net. And then it's showing us what the labor anticipation is going to be based on all of the things that get paid for tear off, removal, disposal, any additional pay for double layer removal or steep slope, second story, any specialized accessories like a power vent or anything. So all the labor items that get paid for are going to be totaled up here. And then same thing with the material. All of your material costs are going to be totaled up here. Any taxes, so you have the ability within RoofSnap to define your tax rate. And not only can you define a tax rate on your materials, but you can define a tax rate on materials only or a tax rate on materials and labor combined. Then, of course, the total job cost. Now, when you've set up your materials and your labor items within RoofSnap, you will define what we call the markup. And the markup is, it's a multiplier. Like, so say, for example, a 1.44 multiplier, that's going to achieve a 30% gross margin. 44 divided by 144, 30%, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't ask me math.
Yeah. If you have any questions about setting up materials, Katrina is really great at specializing and helping with material setups. I do a lot of demos and things for maybe metal roofing material setups. If you have any specific, like if you do flat roofing, underlayments, coatings, stuff like that, I'll definitely be the person to help. And of course, any of the math, any of the coverage ratios, things like that, we can always dive in and help you out with that stuff as well.
Absolutely.
So let's dive on down just a little bit further. So this gross profit on this job is going to be $1,571.70, and that is a 38.5% gross margin. So if your target was 35%, and to win this job, you needed to give them a little discount, what this is telling us is that yes, we have a little bit of wiggle room on this job if 35% is your target gross margin. Now, estimated commission for Katrina, who is the user we're using right now, it's not been set up. It's at just a 0 commission, but you can set up commission to be a percentage of the contract amount, or you can set it up to be a percentage of the gross margin.
Nice.
So if it's 25% of the total profit on the job, you could set it up that way, or if it's say 10% of the total contract amount.
Gotcha.
Last but not least, after taking into account the commission, you'll see a final company profit and a final company gross margin here at the very bottom. So please, if you are, if you're one of the customers of RoofSnap who's managing your own company, maybe you've got a couple salespeople, but you're also out there selling, empower yourself and empower your sales team to use this summary report on the front end. It's going to make sure that you are selling profitably and not over discounting jobs when you're in a competitive situation.
Yes, very good.
All right, Katrina, I'm going to go ahead and just X out of that summary report.
All right.
Now we have two more reports that are going to be helpful, and these are post-sale reports. So once you have sold the job and you're moving it over into production, there's a couple documents in here that are going to be really beneficial. I can't tell you, Katrina, how much time I used to spend putting together the material order sheet that would be sent to my supplier.
Right.
It's almost like the old school method 10 years ago. It was like another 40 minutes of calculating how much hip and ridge I needed, how many bundles that was going to be, how much starter, how many bundles of field shingles, all the drip edge, all the ice and water shield, and on and on and on.
Man.
Well, once all this stuff is set up in RoofSnap, it's going to automatically calculate your material order quantities for you.
Wonderful.
That's how the pricing gets configured, is based on that relationship between coverage and installation price, and which is your labor, and material cost.
Right.
Bear with us for 2 seconds. When we're live streaming, it just takes a little bit longer for the data to communicate. This material order sheet here is going to go ahead and calculate all of those things that we just mentioned. So 13 squares for this tiny little roof is going to round up to 39 bundles of the certainteed landmark. 73.5 linear feet of hip and ridge. It's going to round up to 4 bundles. So we are going to have a little extra. I think a bundle of cedar crest, that's about 20 feet of coverage per bundle. So that's going to give us about 80 feet. So we'll have a little bit of leftover, which is the plan here. Mm-hmm. And then the Swift Start Starter is another great example. So it's 161.7 linear feet of application, and that is going to round up again to the nearest orderable quantity, which is 2 bundles.
Great.
And then you'll be able to see all of the items, their total price per item, the image that is associated with each item. Now, there are some settings. So if you're sending this off to your supplier and you don't want to show your internal cost, you can turn that off. You don't have to show that price.
Right.
Same thing with this little image on the right. You don't have to show these images. They're more for your reference and your production team's reference. Down at the bottom, we're going to see the material total. We're going to see total sales tax, and we're going to see the grand total of the material order.
Perfect.
Last but not least, in the exact same regard of a material order sheet, we have a labor summary report. Now, the way that a company that I used to work for, the way we did it, well, I think it's been done many different ways over time, and I'm going to go ahead and open this while I'm talking. So sometimes we would just paper square.
Okay.
And then if the crew came back and said, oh, there was, I don't know. I mean, we always inspected for second layer, and we always inspected for, if it needed new step flashing or if it needed new apron metal. Mm-hmm. And typically we would pay a little extra to the crew for those things.
Gotcha.
But I remember one company I worked with, it just got wildly out of control. The crew would always come back and say, I need more money. You missed this. You missed that. Mm. So on really big jobs, what we would end up doing is providing the crew a sheet like this before they even started the job. And we would say, okay, go out and take a look at the job. This is what it pays. Sign this before you even start the job because this is what it pays. And it doesn't pay more than this. Now, in this day and age, I know that labor is getting harder and harder to find. Mm-hmm. Many of our customers have expressed that, hey, if you know anybody in Illinois, we need more crews. So it's becoming more and more competitive. The amounts that roofing companies are paying crews is, of course, going up as the labor shortage increases. Right. But this might be a way to really hone in your labor costs. If you have a system where you can communicate to your crews that this is going to be your labor, don't ask for more. Go look at it tomorrow and just make sure that you're comfortable with this amount. That might be a way for you to sort of dial in and fix your labor costs so that it's not dinging the profitability of the job on the back end.
Exactly.
This one's pretty simple. We don't have a lot of additional items. You know, maybe if we had like a power vent that had to be wired in, or if we had additional vents that had to be cut in, we might see more labor items on here. But for this one, it's just a flat square amount for providing, for installing the architectural shingles. And then, so that's $65 for this sample estimate here. And then another $20 per square to remove and dispose. And that's going to be, of course, just a 1-layer tear off. And then within this sample account that we have, we're doing another 25 cents per linear foot to install that cedar crest ridge with a total labor of $1,000. If you haven't looked at these documents before, if you haven't set up all of your material pricing for estimating in RoofSnap, I tell you, it saves more time than anything else that RoofSnap has to offer. Absolutely. I know that, you know, we've been popular because of our DIY, draw it yourself roof measuring. Sure. And that's great. If you were hand measuring before and you went straight from hand measuring to RoofSnap, it's saving you tons of time. But if you're still taking those measurements and you're importing them into an Excel spreadsheet, or if you're just calculating it up based on like a per square estimating cost, this is faster. Yeah. It takes, maybe 2-3 hours on average to set up all your materials, and of course that has a lot of fluctuation depending on if you're selling one manufacturer or 15 manufacturers. Right. So the more products you have, of course, the more time it takes to set up all of your materials, labor, and pricing. But once it's set up, it's very easy to maintain, and we'll, of course, help you along the way.
Absolutely. We've got free training, one-on-one sessions. We're happy to set up with you and help configure your material setup.
Tell them a little bit about that, Katrina. What is a sort of a one-on-one session where we help somebody set up their account? What does that typically look like?
Yeah, so it's actually kind of similar to this, but we're one-on-one with you via an online screen share. So we'll block out time for you, hop into your account, and kind of talk about your business practices and make sure the setup makes sense for what you need it to do.
Yep, we'll make a proprietary setup for you. We can help customize your contract document. We can help customize your pre-start checklist if you're currently using one. And then, of course, it's all confidential, and all of your information is extremely secure. No one ever sees it except for, me and Katrina.
Yep.
And you.
Absolutely. Let's transition over here, Jason. Do we have anything to kind of show today?
Yeah, so I mean, we like to sneak peek things, and there we go. There we are.
Thanks.
So we do like to sneak peek things, but sometimes the things that we're working on are, super top secret because, there are competitors out there in the market. So why not just wait till we release for some of those really cool things?
Yes.
So we don't have a sneak peek for you today. I'm really sorry. But we have some things on the horizon that are really cool, and I wish I could tell you more.
I know. Just dangling the carrot. Dangling the carrot. That's all right.
Well, you guys know we've come out with a bunch of big stuff this year. One thing I can tell you, I won't take the time to show you right now, but here in the next week or so, if anyone is on our live webinar today who has not already signed up for RoofSnap, you may have wondered that when you download the app on Android or on iOS, that there's no sign up directly from the app.
Right.
And I'll tell you, I'll just be real candid with you. iOS, when you make an app for an iPhone or an iPad, there's a lot of rules you have to follow. And they have their own internal processes when it comes to capturing credit card information and how you can actually capture customer information when you're on the app. So some of the rules have changed and some of the technology has changed, and so we will be launching the ability for new customers to sign up for RoofSnap right within the iOS app. So if you're not already a customer and you're going to be downloading the iOS app and you want to just go ahead and sign up for your 14-day free trial, that's going to go out probably, I'd say, in about a week or so.
Yep, very soon.
Yep.
Very soon.
Other than that, I don't have any other secrets that I can share. It's all like super secretive right now, but it's really cool.
It's very cool.
And it provides functionality not to new customers, not just to new customers, but to our existing customers. So we're always looking out, trying to make the product better for you, for our loyal customers. Of course, any feedback, if you want to email us any ideas that you have about features that you need or that you've been hoping will come to RoofSnap one day.
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah, send it to support@roofsnap.com, and we'll let you know as soon as that feature is live within the apps.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us here today. If you're viewing live or if you're watching this later, again, we'd love to hear any feedback you have. You can always feel free to call us at 877-RoofSnap or email us at support@RoofSnap. We would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And for anyone that has asked any questions in the comments, we will respond to you directly just as soon as we finish this live stream today. All right.
Awesome.
Great. So thank you guys so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next month. Have a great rest of your day.
See ya.
Bye-bye.